We are in the book of Genesis, chapter 43. There's 50 chapters, so we're getting there, aren't we? Woohoo! Now, as a review, there may be some that weren't here. Jacob's 10 sons went down to Egypt to buy food because there was a great worldwide famine. We say 10 because Rachel, who was it? Who was the mom? It was Rachel. Had 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. And Joseph was sold into slavery by the other brothers, great guys. And so Benjamin is kept at home. He's Jacob's favorite. He's not sending Benjamin off. He sends his remaining 10 sons out of 12 down to Egypt to buy food. Now, in this point in the historical narrative, Joseph's been gone for more than 20 years. Dad thinks that he's dead. Brothers have no clue what happened to him. But Joseph, after serving as a slave and enduring some injustices, had been promoted to governor of Egypt, next guy down below Pharaoh. And this promotion was because he had interpreted a dream for Pharaoh. There's going to be 7 years of plenty and abundance, great crops, followed by 7 years of famine. So store up some grain to help Egypt during the 7 years of famine. And so we have the 10 sons of Jacob going down to Egypt to buy grain because it's a huge famine. And they stand before Joseph, who is administering all of this grain as they sell it to other countries. And he recognizes the brothers. They don't recognize him. Joseph speaking in Egyptian, using an interpreter to talk to his brothers. They don't have a clue that it's Joseph. And so Joseph is Joseph is giving them a hard time. And we saw, the important thing is that we saw as Joseph was tough to them, and the brothers are talking to each other, thinking Joseph doesn't understand, they're talking about, we were wrong to sell our brother into slavery. And look at, our sin has been found out, and God is judging us for what we did. And as Joseph hears this, it tugs on his heart. In chapter 42, verse 19, we see Joseph's response. He had called them spies. You're a bunch of crooks down here. And no, we're not. We're honest men. He says, if you are honest men, chapter 42, verse 19, if you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses, and bring back your youngest brother, Benjamin, to me. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And so Simeon is picked to stay in prison, and the 9 brothers go back home with the grain. Now, I was talking with Paul this morning. What do you think Joseph did with Simeon while he's in prison? Did he throw him in the very pit that he was in? Or was he kind to him and gave him good food while he's in prison? He's there for probably more than a year. If it was me, I'd be going, you're going into the same pit I was. You're going to experience the same thing I did, you creep, for selling me into slavery. And Paul said, no, he's representing Jesus, so he's probably being nice and kind to him like Jesus would be to us. We'll never know until we get to heaven and ask. But the brothers arriving back home in Hebron, which is kind of the southern end. Oh, I've got plants in the way. If you can see the map, it's kind of down around here. So they're coming back from Egypt way down there up to Hebron where his dad is living. The sons told Jacob everything that happened. They said, let us go back with Benjamin to rescue Simeon. And Jacob replies, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother, Joseph, is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. What about Simeon? Sorry, he's gone, according to the dad. And so chapter 42 closes with Jacob's unwillingness to risk the life of his remaining son, even if it means the life of Simeon. Let's pick it up in chapter 43. Now the famine was severe in the land. And it came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought back from Egypt that their father said to them, go back to Brolam's and buy us a little food. We're running out of food. You got to go back and buy some more. And he wasn't sending his sons back because of Simeon. He's sending them back because they were beginning to starve. His motive was basic necessity. But Judah spoke to him saying, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. So Judah's squaring off with Dad. Dad, this Egyptian guy was mean. And he was deadly serious. If you send us with Benjamin, we'll go. But if not, no way, Jose. That Egyptian ruler was clear. You won't see my face unless Benjamin's with us. And so Dad says, why did you deal so wrongly with me as to tell the man whether you even had a brother? You know, he's like, it's got to be someone's fault. I'll make it your fault for even telling him that you had a brother. He's desperate, and he's playing the victim. In reality, it was Jacob's fault. Why did he have a favorite son and made the brothers not like him and sell him into slavery? Why does he have a favorite son now with Benjamin? If he had treated his sons equally, he wouldn't be having these problems. And isn't it typical for us? When we have problems, we've got to blame it on somebody else. And so the boys answered Jacob's complaint. But they said, the man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? How did he know to ask these questions? Because it's Joseph. And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, bring your brother down? Joseph knew the right questions to ask. And the boys, they're being honest. Hey, honesty is the best policy. Let's just answer honestly, and we shouldn't get in trouble. Then Judah said to his father Israel, his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. If you hadn't denied us before, we could have gone down, gotten Simeon, and come back by now. Now here we see the first noble recorded act by Judah. If you recall, it was his idea to sell Joseph into slavery. And it was Judah who left his brothers to take a Canaanite bride. It was Judah who wronged his daughter-in-law by not giving her to his youngest son, as was the custom. But he had relations with her as a harlot on the road. But here, he does good. He takes responsibility for Benjamin at the cost of his own life and the life of his sons. Verse 11, and their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present for the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also and arise, go back to the man, and may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So he starts off, if it must be so, then do this. He finally realizes he has no option. They're going to die of starvation unless he yields. But remember, Jacob's a schemer, isn't he? Take some bribes. Go down and take some bribes. Some best fruits, honey, spices. Take double the money. And take back the money that erroneously was put back into your sacks. And okay, take Benjamin. Now let me ask you, who's in the driver's seat here? You know that song, I've been riding in the front seat, driving, thought it was a good place to be. Now I'm in the back seat letting God drive. Who's in the driver's seat? Take the bribes. Do this, do this. He's manipulating the circumstances. Why do we wait so long before we hand things over to God? Anybody have trouble with that? Yeah, I do. I have way more confidence in myself than trusting in him. How stupid is that? God is faithful. God will act. Now remember Jacob, how stubborn he was. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think? 11, yeah. Remember, he's the guy that wrestled with God all night. I've got this plan. If Esau attacks this part of the family, I can flee with the other part of the family. And he wrestles with God all night to get his will. And finally, God has to dislocate his hip. Yeah, how's that running away going to go for you now with a dislocated hip? And he cries out, don't go unless you bless me. God finally got him to submit. And then it all works out great according to God's plan. Well, he's regressing. He's planning things again. If I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. If I suffer, if it goes wrong like everything else in my life, okay. He seems to focus on the negative outcomes instead of God's blessings and promises. Think of all the promises in his life that he could be focusing on. And as we read here, does it seem like he was a really joyful guy? The joy of the Lord is my strength. He's looking at the woe is me stuff instead of the, oh, God has blessed me and he will protect me stuff. So think of that in our lives. Do we have joy in our life? What are we focusing on? If we're focusing on ourselves and our plans and we're manipulating, we don't end up with much joy because it doesn't go very well. But when we focus on God and what he does in our life, it's awesome. Verse 15, so the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand, and arose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, take these men to my home, and slaughter an animal, and make ready. Now remember, he's speaking in Egyptian here, so they don't understand what he's saying. Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon. Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Now this is unusual. And the brothers are going, what's going on? We've been moved to another facility. Yikes. Verse 18, now these men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, it is because of the money which was returned in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may make a case against us and seize us to take us as slaves with our donkeys. Is their glass half full or half empty? We're in trouble. They're thinking like their dad, assuming the worst. Woe is me. It's because of that money. And so now we have to manipulate things, try to control the circumstance. When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked with him at the door of the house and said, oh, sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened when we came to the encampment, on their way back, when they camped, we opened our sacks, and there, each man's money was in the mouth of a sack. Our money full weight. So we have brought it back in our hand to give it to you again. We have brought down other money in our hands to buy food. We don't know who put the money in our sacks. Can you imagine what the servant's thinking? Because he knew the whole story. Joseph said, put the money back in their sacks. So verse 23, he said, peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. Now, if you think of it, he's telling the truth, because he did have their money. And Joseph said, go put it back in their sacks. And he did. So he's telling the complete truth. And notice he's calling on God, the real God, the servant of Joseph. Do you think Joseph ever told him about the real God and witnessed to him? Most likely. The guy's probably a believer. Then he brought Simeon out from prison. Can you imagine how Simeon must have felt? I didn't know if you guys were ever coming back. I've been in here for a year or more. 24. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. Then they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they would eat bread there. They're beginning to go, what's going on? They're washing our feet. They're feeding our donkeys. He's going to come here and eat? Guys, get all the money together. Get the spices together. Get the bribe together. We'll put it out here so when he walks in, he can see it. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house and bowed down before him to the earth. Then he asked them about their well-being and said, is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? Now, two things here. One, when they bow down, you know Joseph remembers that dream he had, the prophetic dream, where all the wheat sheaves bowed down to his. And then the other one, where the moon and the stars, the sun, moon, and stars, all bowed down to him. He's going, the prophetic dream is coming true. Here's my brothers bowing down before me. And then he's curious about Dad. How's Dad doing? He had an issue with the brothers, but he didn't have an issue with his dad. He was a favorite to Dad. He's curious. And they answered, your servant, our father, is in good health. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Now his heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep. He looks at his brother. Emotions overwhelm him. He's got to step behind a curtain or something and get himself back together. So he went into his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, as if he hadn't been crying or anything, and restrained himself and said, serve the bread. Remember, Benjamin's his only full brother. The other guys are all half-brothers. The other guys sold him into slavery. Benjamin was just a little tyke. Last time he saw him, it's been more than 20 years. So they set him a place by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. The Egyptians believed that they descended from the gods, and all other people came from some lower source. So they wouldn't eat, even with Joseph. You're not Egyptian, we can't eat with you because you're just not as good as we are. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. Then the men looked in astonishment at one another. What they did is they had, place settings, and he put them in order of their age. Well, I can see doing the oldest and the youngest because you can figure that out. But how do you figure out all the middle guys? How did he have knowledge to put them in order? They hadn't told him anything. And so they're astonished. Then he took servings to them from before him. But Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and they were merry with him. Why do you think Joseph did 5 times more for Benjamin? I mean, he's the key figure here in this little section. Is that why? You're the key guy, I'm going to give you 5 times more? Or, let me just suggest a possibility. Was he checking the other brothers out? How are you going to behave when I show favor to my full brother? Are you guys still bitter if favor is shown? Maybe that's why, maybe not. But it's something to consider. Chapter 44. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. He's doing it again. They came down to buy food, give them the food, and put their money back in the sack. Let me ask you a question. If you're down for the second time buying food, before you leave, would you check your sack? I would. Put the man's money in the mouth of his sack. Also, put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money. So he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away. They and their donkeys going, yeehaw, it worked. We got Simeon back. We've got Benjamin. We've got lots of food. We're going home. Everything is awesome. It's all done. But Joseph was not done with them. When they had gone out to the city and were not yet far off, Joseph said to his steward, "Get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks?'" Talking about the silver cup. "And with which one he indeed practices divination. You have done evil in so doing." What are the brothers going to say? We didn't do it. We're innocent. No way do we have that cup. Why is he giving them such a hard time? Why is he playing these games with them? We know from other events in the Bible that the Egyptians were indeed skilled with magic. Can you remember Exodus 7? Moses turns his staff into a snake. What did the Egyptians do? They imitated that miracle. Also in Exodus 7, when Moses turned the water into blood, the magicians imitated that miracle. And so here the steward is saying, the cup you stole was the ruler's special cup for divining secrets. That's how he knew you had a brother. That's how he knew how to put you in order as you sat. He's playing like he has this magical ability. Now, why would Joseph do this? Well, maybe he knew that his brothers had not yet come to full conviction of their sin and repentance. Or maybe God knew that that hadn't happened, and he needed the guys to do that. So he's prompting Joseph to do these things. We're not sure of the why, but we do read that it happened. So verse 6, "So he," talking about Joseph's servants, "overtook them, and he spoke to them these same words. And they said to him, 'Why does my Lord say these words? Far be it from us that your servant should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks. How then could we steal silver or gold from you, from your Lord's house? We brought back the money. Why would we do it again? Why would we steal it again? We're innocent. With whomever of your servants is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves. If you find that silver cup in any of our sacks, let that person die, and we will be your slaves.' We agree to the punishment ahead of time. We're that confident that it's not here." Verse 10, "And he said," the servant says, "Let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be blameless." Notice he lowered the punishment. I'm not going to kill the guy. I'll make him my slave, and the rest of you can go. "Then each man speedily let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack, and each went, 'Oh, the money's back, oh no.' So he searched, he began with the oldest and left off with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, which is a sign of mourning, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city." Now, the steward had said, "What? If you don't have the cup, what? You can go. I'll take the one that has the cup." Joseph was unjustly sold into slavery. The brothers couldn't have cared less. But now when Benjamin is taken off to slavery, and truly it's unjust, the brothers voluntarily stand by him. We see a change of heart with these guys. We're going to go with Benjamin. We're going to take the punishment. 14, "So Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there," Joseph meaning, still there, "and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said to them, 'What deed is this you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination?'" It's part of his trick. He's implying he knows more than they think he knows. Could this Egyptian ruler know about us selling Joseph into slavery? Perhaps. Then Judah said, What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak?" Remember, Judah's the one that said, "Let's sell Joseph into slavery. What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are, my Lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found." But Joseph said, Far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. And as for you, go up in peace to your father. God has found out the iniquity of your servants. This can only be interpreted, really, as God knows about our sin of selling our brother into slavery. Our sin has found us out. And then Joseph gives them an out. I'll let you guys go. I'll just keep Benjamin. But the brothers won't leave. Again, we see a change in heart. Had the brothers abandoned Benjamin, as they did Judah, they would have shown their hearts had not changed in 20 years. But now, though they could have abandoned him, they chose to stand by and suffer, even if it means slavery. That's pretty huge. 18. Then Judah came near to him. "O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's hearing, and do not let your anger burn against your servant. For you are even like Pharaoh." He's showing him great respect. "My Lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age who is young. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him." This is the truth. Our dad's old. He has a young son that's his favorite son. Verse 21, "Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. But you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more. So it was, when we went up to your servant, my father, that we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, go back and buy us a little food. But we said, we cannot go down if our youngest brother is with us. Then we will go down. For we may not see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. But you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him. You shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave." So he told him the whole story from Jacob's point of view. Lost his first son. He can't take Benjamin. Verse 30, "Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will happen when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. So your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant remain, let me stay, instead of the lad as a slave to my Lord. And let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest perhaps I see the evil that would come upon my father?" So he tells the whole story. If I return without Benjamin, my dad will die of grief. Please let me take his place. Send Benjamin back so my dad won't die. Is this not a completely different heart than the heart that sold Joseph into slavery? Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him. And he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. So he's moved by this change of heart. How would he have behaved if their heart remained cold and unrepentant? Yeah, we'll go back. We'll leave Benjamin with you. Boy, we ducked that bullet. But he's overwhelmed with emotion as he sees the good heart in their brothers. He sends the Egyptians out, and he finally reveals his identity to the brothers. Then Joseph says to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" And his brothers were deer in the headlights with their mouths open. His brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed. Literally, Hebrew dismayed is frightened or terrified. There's Joseph. I sold him into slavery. It's been 20 years. What's he going to do to me? Or there's Joseph. He's going to love me. Or they had no idea how he's going to respond. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. So they came near. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. How huge is that? As we go through hard times and we go, God, I don't understand. But we know God understands. Joseph is putting all the nuggets together. He understands God's purpose in all of his trials. It was to preserve the life of his family. Now, this does not in any way excuse the sin the brothers did. But it shows that God works all things for good for those who are called according to his purpose. Next, Joseph reveals the information that he's learned regarding the famine. For these 2 years, the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. You guys are down here for the second time in 2 years. There's going to be 5 more years, you guys. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all of Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. Man, there's 5 more years. Best thing we can do is bring you down here instead of making all these trips. Now, the land of Goshen, well, I don't have it on the map here, but there's a big alluvial plain in Egypt where the Nile flows out and widens out and floods the land. And that's where they grow all their crops. And Joseph is saying, come and we're going to settle you there. It's the best land of the nation. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and after that his brothers talked with him. Finally, they're reconciled. 20 years. They get back together, they're reconciled, they're forgiven, they're rescued from slavery. It's awesome. Verse 16. Now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants as well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this. Load your animals and depart. Go to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Excuse me. Now you are commanded, do this. Take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Pharaoh's jazzed to hear about Joseph's family. I'll give you the best of the land, and I'm going to give you vehicles. Go get them. Bring them back here. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them carts, according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he sent to his father these things: 10 donkeys loaded with good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys. Remember, the females are worth more because they can have babies. And 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, see that you do not become troubled along the way. What he means by troubled is, don't start rethinking things and arguing with each other. And, during this journey home, keep your purpose. Go get dad, bring him back. He knows his brothers. They love to argue. Then they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. back in Hebron there. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive. And he's governor over all the land of Egypt. What would Jacob think? He's been dead. He was torn apart by pieces. I saw the bloody robe. He can't be alive. And Jacob's heart stood still because he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob, their father, revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. Now I want you to notice something here. What is the name chosen in verse 27? Jacob the trickster. What is the name chosen in verse 28? Israel. One who's ruled by God or submits to God. What's in between the word Joseph and Israel? His spirit was revived. As he's walking in the flesh, he's Joseph, the trickster. Let's send the bribe. As he's walking in the spirit, he's Israel, one governed by God. The author changed the names there for a reason. Verse 28, then Israel said, it's enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Isn't that cool? A little bit of verse 46, chapter 46. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba. That's farther north. No, that's a little bit south. That's a well to the south. He came to that well, Beersheba, and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Notice we're talking about Israel now, not Jacob. First thing he does is goes and offers sacrifices. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. So he said, I am the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and will also surely bring you up again. And Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. Now, to fully understand what's going on here, we need to go back to Genesis chapter 15. I'm reading verses 13 through 16. Then he, meaning God, said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go down to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. He's saying to Abram, I'm going to give you all this land, but your kids are going to go to a different nation for 400 years, and then I'm going to bring them back. Because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. The Amorites were the Canaanites, and they were the neighbors of Abraham. And remember, they had been cursed because God knew that they would all be given over to worshiping false gods. If Abraham's descendants remained in the land of Canaan, they would eventually be absorbed by the Canaanites and end up worshiping these same false gods. And God didn't want that to happen, so he separates them. Also, notice something here. The Canaanites are going to eventually need to be judged. But God's waiting for their iniquity to be complete. So what does God do in preparation of judging this people that rejects him? He removes his people. What do we teach about the rapture? When God comes back and judges the world in the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period, we believe God removes his people so that his people are not subject to God's wrath. We get a picture of God's character here. When he's going to finally judge a people, he always removes his people. What happened in Sodom with Lot? If there's 10 there, I won't judge. But there weren't 10. But he still removed Lot and his family. He removes his people before he pours out his judgment on those that reject him. Your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs for 400 years. So God is even telling Abram how long his family were to reside in Egypt. It's going to be 400 years. And so as Joseph sends for his family, he doesn't seem to recall this prophecy. And as Jacob or Israel goes down to Egypt, it doesn't seem like they understand this prophecy. But back to verse 3 in our study today. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. Don't fear to go down. He's confirming his word to Abraham by saying, Jacob, come on down. And the result is that Israel, the guy and his family, is going to transition into a great nation while they're in Egypt. More than 1 million men came out of Egypt. Verse 4, I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again. God's going to be with them that whole time. God's with us the whole time, whether we're in trials or not. And God is promising to deliver them back out of Egypt, which we know represents the world. We read about their exodus from Egypt in the book of Exodus. And Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. What that means is you're going to die in Egypt. He's going to put his hand on your eyes to close your eyes. But I'm going to deliver your descendants back out. Pretty neat. Nothing surprises God. No matter how bad it gets, God works out his plan. That's because he saw what happened beforehand. We will pick it back up at the beginning of chapter 45 next time. Father, we thank you for your love for us, that you even have concern for us, to work out all of this for our benefit as your plan of saving us from that original sin, Father, that you could remove the sin nature from us. Thank you for your love that is that huge. Thank you for your care and attention from those many thousands of years ago right up to this very moment. Thank you for coming as Jesus to save us and reconcile us to yourself. Your goodness, your grace is beyond understanding, and we thank you, Father, and pray that you would reveal yourself to our hearts and minds. In Jesus' name, amen.